Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm so happy you're with us today. Oh, my dear friends, I have made no secret of the fact that I cannot meditate. I don't have the patience for it. I do have friends, though, who swear by it, and one of them is my own wonderful husband. He credits meditation, frankly, with having him gotten through his life so well. He learned to meditate from the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who actually is not a name now, but he was a name in the 70s because he was the same meditation guru who taught the Beatles, and that's a name you know, back in the 70s. My husband learned it back then, and he has been meditating ever since. But I just cannot quiet my mind enough. So I just chatter away with my spirit guide, Thomas, and he's the one who has helped to get me through life. Our guest today, though, is a real meditation star. Kelvin Chin is an author, a meditation teacher, and a life after life expert. His first book was Overcoming the Fear of Death through each of the four main belief systems. His second book is Marcus Aurelius Updated. He needed updating at this point. 21st Century Meditations on Living Life. That's a collection of 67 essays ranging from emotions, life principles, meditation, and the spiritual. Kelvin's third book is After the Afterlife, Memories of My Past Lives. His past lives reach back 6,000 years, and he's been resurfacing them gradually over the past 45 years. This is our second time talking about this book, which I frankly have found fascinating. He says his past lives have taught him about himself and about how our minds continue from lifetime to lifetime. And I actually, reading his book was sort of like reading fiction, but it isn't fiction. He tells me it's all real. Kelvin is an executive director and founder of the Turning Within Meditation and Overcoming the Fear of Death Foundations, two foundations. And he's an internationally recognized meditation teacher featured in Business Insider, Newsweek, and Kaiser Health News. He's taught meditation at West Point in the U.S. Army, including on the DMZ in Korea. He gets around. Kelvin has been meditating for 52 years, and he's taught meditation to thousands of people in more than 60 countries. He's a graduate of Dartmouth, Yale, and Boston's College School of Law, and this is his fourth visit with us. I've actually known him personally because he lived for a while in the same place I live, so he's one of the very few of our guests that I actually know personally, and I've had lunch with and laughed with, and that's why he's kind of special to me. Kelvin, welcome. It's so good to have you back with us today.
Good to be here again.
Now, what I was hoping we could talk about is a little more about how this all came about, because it's not the sort of thing that happens to most people, that they suddenly start remembering things not just happened last week or last month or even when they first were born, but things that happened a long time ago. And after we talked the last time, I got thinking more and more about it and how fascinating it all was. So let's talk a little bit more about that. I think it happened because you were such a good meditator and you were getting deep into your mind, not just this mind that you're dealing with now, but the larger mind that this mind is a part of.
Exactly.
Really.
Yeah. I would say the last sentence is exactly the way I think of it too. The part that my mind that's talking to you now is part of my connected to and part of, as you said, my larger sense of self, which is also my mind. And that includes, in my experience now, having had these memories over the last 50 years, that includes all of our memories that go back not just to what I may have eaten 2 weeks ago, which I don't remember, but back to what I did 2,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago or 6,000 years ago, some of which I do remember. So I think all of that is part of the our mind, and our memories are part of that part of our mind that recalls stuff from our past. That's what we call memories. But to answer your question, I think you're right. I think that the meditation that I had done for 6 or 7 years every day before my first past life memory started opening up in 1977 really contributed to it. Do I have students who have never meditated before and remember stuff? Yes. Is it possible? Yes. Is meditation absolutely necessary? No, obviously. But from my experience, was it a major contributing factor in opening Kelvin Chin up? I think so. So I agree with you personally from my standpoint anyway. Yeah. And just first of all, what? Opening ourselves up to the possibility that we're not our body, that there's a mind that is separate and distinct from our body. So I think most people in your audience who've meditated and done any kind of meditation of any kind have probably had glimpses of that simple distinction, but simple but basic and fundamental and important distinction, that the mind is not the same as the body, that the mind can continue separate from the body. That's huge.
Well, it is huge, but most people don't ever have the sense that they're accessing deeper memories. They really don't. So how would they, maybe they have had those deeper memories accessed, though, and they don't recognize them.
Yeah.
I think how might they recognize them, though?
I think that's right. And there's something that I came up with this term, I don't know, maybe somebody else did too, but I use this term recognition memories. And that I think that some of the precursors that people, as you kind of imply, may not recognize that are precursors to past life memories are stuff like, I think of recognition memories as like deja vu on steroids. You know, people have all had the deja vu experience. Like, you know, you and I have had lunch together, Roberta, and, you know, we're sitting there in Austin, Texas at some restaurant, we're having lunch. And I've had this experience many times with different people where you're sitting there and you kind of go, wait a minute, I think I've had this conversation before. I think, you know.
Yes. So deja vu, this is some experience, even walking down some street somewhere, triggers, oh, this makes me think of have I been here before?
Right. So sometimes
we all had that sense.
Yeah. A lot of people have had that. So I use that kind of as a jumping off point because it's a fairly common experience, you know?
Yes.
And whether it's past life related or not, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm not saying that it's always past life related. No. But it's that type of experience that to me is the beginning of what I call recognition memories, which are that experience, but like times 10 or times 100. You know, it's like, wait a minute. I know I've been here before in South Dakota, and I've never stepped foot in South Dakota this lifetime. And I know I can check that because I can ask my parents, I can ask my sister, my brothers, my friends, have we ever been to South Dakota? No, we've never been. And yet you go to this place, I'm just picking South Dakota randomly, and you got to go, it's so familiar. It's just bizarre. It's like deja vu on steroids, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And then later could be, you know, a day later, 5 years later, or 50 years later, you may have an experience that, wait a minute, in South Dakota, this happened and this happened and this happened. And how would I know that? So then you start having these other corroborative type experiences. Right. So I'm giving people tips of how what they might be able to notice that they're not noticing, right? So these type of things may actually be connected. You know, that childhood experience that I'm making up of, you know, finally ending up going there when you're a teenager, but thinking that you've been there before and you never have because you've checked with your family, but then maybe 5 or 10 or 15, 20 years later, having memories of stuff that occurred in South Dakota that's not from this lifetime. That type of stuff are what I call recognition memories that sometimes can jigsaw puzzle piece together.
I think that I've had experiences like that. I think many people have by midlife, many people have had them. The question is, do we pursue them? And most people, I think, don't. That they're having a busy day.
Right.
They have that thought, but they've got to go to the grocery store, they've got to make dinner, they've got to put the kids to bed, and then then there's always TV to watch or something, and the memory passes.
It passes, exactly.
But you pursued the memory when it came, right? And
yeah, it made me think about like why, because I'm a inquisitive. You know me, my personality well enough to know I'm a curious. I get curious about stuff. I'm like a knowledge sponge. Somebody, I'll be at a reception talking to somebody, and they'll talk about, I don't know, construction of a building, and I'll go, wow, tell me about that. It's just this stuff that I have nothing to do with professionally. I find curious. I want to learn about stuff. So I think the inquisitiveness, if that's a word, of my mind is kind of what you're referring to, that makes me think more about the stuff. And I think anybody could, but everybody's mind's different. They don't have to be like me, and I wouldn't want everybody to be like me. It'd be a boring world. But anyway, but no, seriously, it's everybody's unique. And so, and those people who are curious, I think, tend to delve into it more, and then might surface stuff. I'll give you an example. I had a client some years ago. It's been 5, 6, 7 years ago now, and she was curious about her past lives, but had never uncovered anything. She knew of what it was, but she'd never personally uncovered anything. And I said, and I described this deja vu on steroids idea to her, and like with recognition memory idea. And she said, well, actually, when she was thinking this through, because she hadn't thought about it this way before, she said, actually, I have this really weird connection with certain kind of jewelry. So for her, it wasn't a place, it was a thing. It was and I said, what kind of jewelry? And she said, well, like rings. I said, well, do you have a specific connection with a certain kind of ring, or just all rings that go on fingers? And she said, no, it's very specific. I said, well, what do you know what it looks like in your mind? And she goes, yeah. And I said, well, go online. We got this thing called the internet now, and look around to see if you can find jewelry that looks like what you have in your mind. And she sent me a picture, and she screenshotted it, and she texted it to me, and it's a picture of a serpent wrapped around a finger.
Oh, yeah.
And so I said, well, okay, now you got that. And she said, this is exactly what it looks like in my mind. I said, okay, find out when and where were they made? When were they popular? And, they could be popular today or whatever, but just look back and kind of get a sense historically and see, and then regardless of what years you come up with, see if you get any emotional kind of response, because you could find these rings probably today, or you could find them in ancient times or in between. Who knows what? Do you get an emotional response from any of them? And she looked, and she found that they were first made in 1st or 2nd century Egypt. In ancient Egypt, they were made in ancient Egypt, but they were most popular, not so much in Egypt, they were somewhat popular in Egypt, but she said they were most popular in ancient Rome, because Egypt and Rome back then, you were very connected. That was the breadbasket of Rome. That's where most of their grain came from, Egypt and so forth, from the Nile, etc. So there was a lot of trade going back and forth. And so they were really popular in 2nd century Rome, and that's where she got the emotional hit from. And I said, the next thing what you could do, these are tips for your audience, obviously. The next thing you could do is, before you go to sleep at night, just tell yourself, I want to open up and see if I have any ancient memories. You don't have to, some people may call it past lives, but just say old memories, old memories. So she said, okay, let's see if I have any old memories. And she called me up afterwards. She took a nap in the middle of the day, whatever. And she did this before she lay down and take a nap. And she had this nightmare during her sleep.
A daymare, basically.
At first it started a nightmare. It wasn't a nightmare the whole time. So at first there was fear, because as you and I were talking about before, people have a lot of fear, and so
Yes.
At first there was a fear of drowning in it. She was sleeping in a temple, in a temple, and like an ancient temple, like with columns and the whole thing.
Oh my goodness!
And it was a flood going on, and her room was flooding, and then she started helping other people get out of the temple, whatever.
Oh my.
Why she was sleeping in the temple, who knows? But somehow the mind does these weird things, it connects.
Yeah.
But then she thought she woke up. So I don't know if anybody's had that. I've had this experience. You've probably had this experience where you're dreaming, and then you wake up and yet you're still dreaming. You think you've woken up in the dream, but you haven't. But you're awake in the dream. So now she's still dreaming, but now she thinks she's awake. So but she's still in the dream. She goes out into the hallway after she helps people escape from this, the flood.
Oh my word!
Now she's in the hallway of the temple, and she sees this person standing in the hallway, and he's got a white toga on,
Oh my!
And he's got a medallion hanging around his neck with a big plaque, and it's not in English, but she can read it in her dream, and it turns out it's in Latin. But in her dream, she knows what it says, whatever it said. Can't remember what she said it said, but anyway. But then what she remembers about looking at the guy. Now, you guys, I don't know if people can see me or just hear me, but if you can't see me,
people can see you.
I shave my head. All right.
Yes.
So I shave my head. So in the dream, this guy standing in the hallway of this temple has a full head of curly blonde hair, and she remembers it explicitly. It was very blonde. It was so blonde that it was shiny, glittering, like sparkly blonde.
Sparkly blonde
hair. So that's material to the story. Wait till you hear the kicker at the end. So she sees this guy, and he says to her, you want to remember your past lives? How can you remember your past lives if you're afraid of dying? Because that was the part in the dream she was had before, right?
Right.
So he says that to her. Then she really wakes up. She realizes, oh, I wasn't awake. I was still dreaming. Yeah. So then she calls me up. Oh, no, she didn't call me up right away. Then she goes into Google, because I had told her to follow the breadcrumbs. So that's another tip I gave my student. Follow the breadcrumbs. So she's got breadcrumbs. She's got this blonde guy in a toga, and telling her stuff or whatever. So she goes into, I can't remember exactly what this story is in my first book, Overcoming the Fear of Death, the longer version. I'm giving you the short version, but I don't know if I have it easily accessible. But she goes into, oh, here it is, Josephine and Lucius, it's called, the section. So she goes into Google, and she types in 3 words. She wrote these down, and she called me up right afterwards, and she told me what the order when she did this. She typed in 3 words. She typed in bearded, blonde, curly, because he had a beard, and blonde, curly. Those are the things that she remembers about him. And a photo of a marble portrait of a bust or statue of the same man she saw in her dream pops up on her computer screen. She didn't know who he was, because all she sees is a picture, right? And it's just, a bust. So, they don't have any color because they're ancient, right? It's just this stone bust. She didn't know who he was. Then she added the 4th word to her search. She added Roman, because he looked Roman. And the name Lucius Verus popped up. So that's when she found out who the guy was. And then she goes, and I told her, well, go follow the breadcrumbs more. And I hung up the phone. She called me up. Say, go back to the computer. Follow the breadcrumbs more. Find out who this guy is, Lucius Ferris.
Yeah.
Go look him up. And turns out he had a mistress. Well, first of all, before that, she finds out that this guy, Lucius Verus, was a real person in ancient Rome, and he was a party animal. He was a party boy, and really like a rich party guy. And he's known for, like hosting orgies and all kinds of stuff. And he had blonde, curly hair, and he was so fascinated with his own good looks that he put a gold dust in his hair to make it sparkly.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
that's why the sparkly thing, right? So he put gold dust, because he had so much money and the guy's so full of himself. He puts gold dust in his hair to make him, yeah, that was his thing. That's what he's known for. And then she had a memory of shaving him. Now, how weird is that, right?
Very.
So then she looks that up, and she finds out that this guy had a mistress named Panthea, who there's a famous story about her shaving off his long barbarian-like beard. That's the quote from the historians. Shaving off, and he never let anybody touch his beard, but that one mistress, she somehow convinced him, like, to show that she was the special one.
She was. Oh my word!
Who knows? Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't, but this was her experience.
That is so amazing.
Crazy, right?
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an example of following breadcrumbs,
Oh my goodness.
Started with her recognition memory of this serpent-like ring on her fingers.
Oh wow.
That she was attracted to. Yeah.
And she found it through Google. Oh,
yeah, she just Googled it. Yeah. She found this
incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do other people have that kind of success?
Some people do. I mean, again, it's dependent, and it's so unique to each person. I think the other thing, aside from the meditation opening me up and reducing my stress and my anxiety and all of that, and also what we talked about, the mind and the body.
Yeah.
Recognizing that's separate. I think the other huge limiting, the barrier to most people, is, in addition to what she talked about, the fear of death thing that came up, like this guy talked about in a dream, like, how can you remember your past lives if you're afraid of death?
He's a jerk even in the afterlife, it turns out.
Exactly. He's got to be instead of a jerk, even like, that goes to the personality issue. The personalities continue.
Absolutely. We don't change that much.
Not all of a sudden you're a jerk and then you're not a jerk. No. You're a jerk for a long time. Anyway, but the other barrier, the other big barrier, I think, is embarrassment. I think a lot of people, because we've all done stupid stuff, and I've done stupid stuff in this lifetime.
Yeah, we all have. Of course.
Who hasn't, right? So you think I'm going to be really open to find out all the incredibly stupid stuff I've done in other lifetimes? I think a lot of people, that's a bothersome thing, and I think that's a sufficient barrier for some people. Seriously, right?
Maybe they'd rather not know.
It's true, right? I mean, but the thing is, me well enough. You know my personality, Roberta. I really don't care. I'm like, I know that I'm not perfect. I know nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. That's all I know about me. I'm not perfect. So I don't really care what other people think of me. I'm a seeker. And so as a seeker, I want to develop my own knowledge of myself. And that means the warts and the good stuff.
Of course. But the thing is, the more you know of yourself, the more you're able to help other people too. I'm sure that's been true. So true.
Yeah. So if people believe me, they think I'm crazy. It doesn't bother me.
No, not at all.
They're going to think what they're going to think anyway. I don't
have control
over that. So it's like, it
Yeah,
doesn't worry me. It's
right.
like people are going to think what they think. I'm here to help people and help myself and help other people. And I hope I do it in a way that's not hurtful, as much as humanly possible, not hurtful to other people. But other than that, what do I have? I don't have control over other minds. So, right.
Absolutely, absolutely right. But so is that what you do typically though? What is it? How is it that you help people
Well, most of
when,
the
when you're
time, yeah.
when you're doing this kind of consulting?
When I'm doing this type of work, it's reducing anxiety, reducing fears about whatever they're afraid of, because it just, pick a list. I mean, pick anything off the list. The list is a mile long. So it doesn't matter. Helping them reduce their anxieties, balance their chemistry. As I teach the meditation, it's a very easy technique. There's no clearing of the mind. You don't have to push thoughts out. You don't have to have a quiet mind. You can have a what I call washing machine spin cycle mind, and the technique, the way I teach it, will still work. So that's one aspect. The other aspect of it is helping people think more clearly about stuff where they may have this idea and this idea, and they try to put them together and they don't really go together, but they've been living trying to push them together, and they don't work. That's what cognitive dissonance is, right? So
Absolutely.
trying to help clear people's thinking up so it's more consistent, I think that's a huge barrier to any of this type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So helping people to think more clearly about their own lives must be huge.
Yeah, 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 yep, exactly, exactly. And
You
the meditation is they go hand in hand, because the meditation is more about, as you've talked about, expanding the conscious capacity of the mind, and then the clarity of the thoughts is cleaning up the thought processes. So one is cleaning up the thought processes. I liken that to, like, you have a deck on an ocean liner, and in the deck chairs, some of them are broken. We'll get rid of some of the broken deck chairs and rearrange the deck. Those are like our thoughts and emotions and our thought patterns and emotional patterns. The deck chairs are. But what I do also is expand the deck. I teach people that's the meditation component, expanding the conscious capacity of the deck of the ship, making the deck bigger, making the deck 5-10 times bigger. Well, that makes the rearranging of the thought patterns and emotional patterns much easier, right?
right.
Clean it up easier. So
Do
they
you
go
find
hand.
we talked about a little bit before we went on air. We talked a little bit about fear. Do you find a lot of people are afraid nowadays?
I think, well, nowadays, I think every day. I mean, for 6,000 years, my memories go back, and my memories tell me that people have had fears about all different kinds of stuff uh, throughout the history of humanity. Millions of years is what I would guess. Um, However long we've been around on planet Earth as humans, and then before that, where were we? I don't know, Roberto, but where before humans here, wherever. I think it goes along with a mind who is who is who looks at itself, him or herself, as more limited, tends to have more fears. The more expanded the conscious capacity, the less concerned the mind or the individual is with stuff they don't have control over. I talk a lot about the fear of uncertainty in my work, because really the long list of fears that most people are carrying around can be distilled down to that one fear: the fear of the unknown, the fear of uncertainty. Same thing. And so I tell people, I can't get rid of uncertainty, but I can help you get rid of your fears. So uncertainty is part of the universe we live in. It's just things happen, that are out of our control. Some things are within our control, but a lot of things are not within our control. And we've already talked about all the minds, the quadrillions of, I don't know how many quadrillions of minds out there in the universe. We don't have control over their minds, and we don't have control over the weather and so forth, per se, but we do have control over ourselves. So control what we control and let go of what we can't. And by doing that and expanding our conscious capacity, fears tend to dissipate. Uncertainty is going to exist anyway, but I get people to a place where it's like, okay, bring it on. It's like I can handle it. That's a place of self-confidence, right? And then whether people's past life memories open up or not, it doesn't matter. They're living life more fully in the present, which is really what it all matters. Well, all that matters anyway.
To have fears makes it impossible to you to really live, I think, at all.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
you're always, I don't understand how you really can live if you're fearful, because you're always looking over your shoulder and looking around and hedging and afraid. So helping people, if you can help people get rid of that fear, that's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge because you're absolutely right. People will often say to me, now I feel like I'm starting to live my life. It's exactly right. But before that, though, they don't know what that is because it only has been a life full of fear. So they don't know what life is like, living life is like without the fear. But then when they do, they have the recognition that you just described, wow, now I really feel like I'm living life. But it's always as compared to what? If you never have had that experience, you don't know what that is. But yeah, that's what I help people do, because so many people, 66 countries now, people from around the world I've worked with now, usually on Zoom or on WhatsApp, internationally anyway. They come to me because they're desperate, because they have so much anxiety going on in their life, and they realize at that point that they cannot continue living like that with so much fear and anxiety. Very often, I guess I'd say 70% of the people who contact me are in that boat. And then the other are kind of in the more curiosity boat that we were talking about earlier, where they want to learn more about their spiritual growth and so forth and so on. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. I hear from people who are afraid of death, and that's what I do, is to help them understand that there is no such thing. What are we talking about? I don't understand what you're talking about, because there is no such thing. And that's what we work on.
Right.
But it's been so long since I was afraid, because when you don't fear death, you don't fear anything.
Yeah.
It all goes away.
Yeah.
Which is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah, because you realize that there is no death.
If there isn't death, there's
no death.
There's nothing to be afraid of at all.
Yeah, it's biological death, we could say, of the physical biological body. And I've inserted the word biological because, as you know, when we die, our mind continues and we still have a light body, and a physicist would say that that is still a physical body. Now, most people wouldn't think of it that way because they think of physical as biological. So now I say, when our biological body dies.
Yeah, or our material body, or the material body is what
material body or our biological, same thing. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because we still have a light body. We still are identifiable on the other side.
An energy body. Yeah.
Energy body, exactly. Energy body, right. So yeah, but that continues, and so there is no death of the soul, of the spirit, consciousness, mind, right?
Which is so, and you teach that as well. You must get a lot of people who have that same concern, that same mission.
Well, yes, and then I have also people I help who don't believe in an afterlife, and I don't try to convince them that there is one, because I'm trying to help them get rid of their fears. So if their fears go away, that's all we care about. So I'm the anti-fear, anti-anxiety guy, I tell people. But, I don't need to change their belief system. If they're like my dad, you probably remember stories about my dad, who was a scientist, engineer. This is it, one life, that's it. I didn't have to convince him, because after he died, he came and visited us a bunch of times. So, it's like, right? I don't have to convince people. They're going to experience the fact that
Then they're
you
converted.
die.
Yeah, my mother wouldn't believe, no matter what I told her, she would not believe it. Then I contacted her through a medium, and the first thing she said was, "You were right about everything."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I'm here to help people get rid of their fears and live their lives however they want to. And if
Yeah,
they want to
right.
live their life like my dad did, great. If they want to live their
Yeah.
life exploring other spiritual afterlife stuff, great. Either way, doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad things are going so well for you. I wish you didn't live halfway across the country, but different strokes for different folks. That's
Yeah. Well, my kids are out here, right? Remember my kids. So
yeah.
they're out here
That,
a lot.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live where my kids live too. I think we all want to do that.
Yeah.
My whole family became Texans. So what do you do?
That's funny.
No, I know we really enjoy it here. We lived for so long on the East Coast, and it was so cold, and then the snow and all of that. Forget that. You
Yeah.
get to the point where you don't want to live like that anymore at all either. So,
Yep. I've had plenty of that growing up in Boston. Yeah.
tell me about the DMZ. Actually were teaching there for a while.
Yep. I was on the DMZ. When I was in graduate school at Yale, I got a phone call to go teach on the weekends at West Point Military Academy. So this was before the DMZ. But so I was teaching at the U.S. Army Academy, West Point Military Academy. I taught the first meditation courses there in the history of West Point.
Wow.
Yeah, when I was in graduate school. And then as soon as I got out of graduate school, I was in Asia teaching meditation and got a phone call to go up to Korea to teach in the U.S. Army. So I taught on all the U.S. Army bases in Korea, and then the Air Force called me up, the U.S. Air Force called me up, and I taught on all the U.S. Air Force bases in South Korea. But yeah, I was up on the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, a half a dozen times teaching meditation up there. And I'll tell you, Roberta, it was the most stressful place I've ever been in my life on planet Earth, the DMZ at the time. This was, those people who are old enough may remember, and they can Google and look this up on Wikipedia, but there are tunnels that are now part of a tour, I've heard. I haven't been back, but I've heard that tourists, you can tour the tunnels that the North Koreans were digging underneath the DMZ to start World War III. And I was there. I arrived there 2 weeks after the first tunnel was discovered. The first tunnel was 2 miles long from North. So people who don't know what the DMZ is, the demilitarized zone is no man's land that was created after the Korean War, or as part of the Korean War armistice between,
Right.
and where no man's land, it's shoot to kill. You can't be in there. It's a buffer zone. It's
That's why I didn't understand how you could have been teaching meditation there.
so yeah, it's 2 to 3 miles wide, and it's the width of Korea, of the peninsula, Korean peninsula, separating North and South Korea. Well, I'm at the southern edge of the DMZ, at which there are about 50,000 troops all along the whole, spanning the width of Korea. And then the North Koreans and the Chinese have about another 50,000 troops or something like that, spanning the width on their side. And so when I was there, well, 2 weeks before I got there, somebody discovered, the quick story is there were two, I don't know if they were UN or US soldiers, but there were 2 soldiers from the South who saw smoke coming up from the ground in the demilitarized zone, where there's not supposed to be any human beings. And
No.
they saw smoke coming up, so they crept out there, at night and whatever, and investigated. And they heard clanking, or they heard
They were
digging.
digging under
Yeah,
the ground.
yeah. And so a crack had somehow occurred in the ground, and they must have been smoking cigarettes or something, the North Koreans down there, and whatever, they saw smoke coming up. Anyway, yeah. So they
Wow.
went back, and I think one or two soldiers were killed in that event. So
Wow.
that one tunnel was 2 miles long already, and the estimate was 1,000 troops an hour could have gotten into South Korea if they had completed the last mile or so of the tunnel.
Oh my word. I don't remember hearing anything about that.
Oh yeah, and then there was another tunnel in March, a few months later. There was another tunnel that was discovered that was even bigger. You could fit tanks and artillery and everything, 30,000 troops an hour through that tunnel.
Oh, oh my word. Yeah. For a while, the North was determined to take over because they wanted South Korea pretty badly.
Yep.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
So I was teaching meditation in the Army along the.
No wonder this was a stressful time in your life.
Oh my God, it was
My
crazy.
dear. Oh.
It was crazy. Yeah.
Oh goodness. Oh
yeah.
yeah. That would have been World War III right there. You would have had
it would have
it
been World War
there.
III. Absolutely, it's no question about it. It would absolutely would have been World War III. It was interesting because these are, I was teaching anybody, 18-year-old, enlisted men, senior officers, anybody could
Was
learn.
this like the 70s or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
1970,
wow.
1974, and 74, 75. And so it's interesting because they were so stressed out, especially 18, 19-year-old kids.
Anybody would need meditation. It would have been those boys.
Oh my God. I would teach them to meditate, and they would be, it was lots of noise going on always around, you're on the Army base, it's lots of noise going around. And so, I'd ask them after, like on day one, I teach them on day one, a 4-day course, but on day one, I teach them the basic instruction, and I have them meditate with me, and I have them open their eyes up, and I said, so did you hear the outer noises? Did it bother you? And they go, what noise?
Oh, what a gift you were giving them.
Yeah. They were so stressed out. Yeah.
Oh, those poor kids.
Yeah.
Oh my word. Well, we have come, actually, we've gone past when we should have stopped talking. Whenever you and I talk, we just go on forever.
No, that's okay.
This has been wonderful. I'm so glad we did this. We're going to have to do this again.
Good to talk to you again, always.
And this turn within, this little placard you have by your shoulder. That's
my daughter made this. So my daughter's teaching meditation along with me now as part of under my nonprofit organization. And that's Turning Within is the name of the meditation technique, Turn Within. So she made that for me.
That's nice. It's turnwithin.com, right? Or .org.
.org.
.org. That's right.
Turning within. It's a turning within. I think it's turning within. Turningwithin.org.
So what do you want people to take away from our conversation today?
Well, I'd say that, just to take away the fact that the main thing about life and in living more fully in the continual present is finding ways to reduce our stress and opening our conscious capacity of awareness to the larger sense of self that you were talking about earlier. And that if people are curious about opening up to past lives, then a key component in addition to that is developing a sense of security within oneself, confidence within oneself, to not really care about what other people think about what we're doing or who we are, who we claim to be and what our experiences are, and to really focus our attention more on ourselves than less on what other people think about ourselves.
Beautifully said. That's the ultimate freedom, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Oh, consider yourself hugged, my sweet. I think that's wonderful.
Likewise. Good to see you.
Wonderful to see you too. Oh, wow. This has been great. Yes, turningwithin.org is the website. And again, my dear friends, we have come to the end of our time. This has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. I'm so happy you were with us today. And please never forget that you are a powerful, eternal being. You never began, you never will end. And when you really get that, it changes everything in your life for the better. Next week, our guest will be Brenda Rice, who is our own Seek Reality forgiveness guru. At least I've come to sort of think of her that way. Brenda is dedicated to helping people overcome obstacles that hold them back from living life to its fullest by guiding them through a 5-step forgiveness process to heal everything, and especially that includes self-forgiveness, which often is the first step. She's written a nifty book. I really love it. It's called Forgive Yourself. I think everyone should read her book because that's the first step, and you're going to love Brenda. So please be sure to join us next week. And this week, we've been talking with Kelvin Chin, who's a meditation star. He's an author, a meditation teacher, and a life after life expert. And his third book is After the Afterlife, Memories of My Past Lives. It describes, we haven't even talked in we meant to get to some more lives. We never did, so he'll be back. His past life memories reach back 6,000 years, and they've been resurfacing for him for the past 45 years, I think because of all his meditation. But they've taught him a lot about himself and about how parts of our minds continue from lifetime after lifetime. And this has been his 4th visit, but there'll be a lot more visits. The thing about Kelvin is that he's really someone that is, as you see, he's easy to talk to. He's easy to just make part of your life. And I just like him as a person. I think he's a very advanced being. He's someone who really sort of makes himself part of your life. And that's kind of, I think, important in any friend. Excuse me. Sorry, I need a little water. I find him just simply a delightful person to know. He's a person, as you see, who is free of what other people think of him, which to me is the ultimate freedom. Now, of course, it's time once again to mention that Seek Reality Online is your one-stop resource for all things afterlife. Just go to seekreality.com and start to learn for yourself that your own reality is eternal, whether you like it or not. You may not like it, but it's eternal. So it's time to learn the ultimate truth from our dear friend Craig Hogan, who's your worldwide expert on all things afterlife. And teachingsbyjesus.com is your single resource for all the divine truths that are brought to us in perfect love by the greatest teacher of all, Master Jesus. Now, after all this time, it finally is Jesus's turn. The Christianity that is the religion that's practiced now was created by the Roman Emperor Constantine 300 years plus after Jesus died here. Finally, the religion that he never started is dying, so the genuine teachings of Jesus can finally be out in the world, and they make Jesus come alive for real. So go to teachingsbyjesus.com and learn what Jesus actually taught. Also, as you know, my own nonfiction books are Liberating Jesus, My Thomas, The Fun of Dying, The Fun of Staying in Touch, The Fun of Growing Forever, The Fun of Living Together, and The Fun of Loving Jesus, Embracing the Christianity that Jesus taught. You can get my books also as audiobooks, all except the last one. And there's a children's book too. It's called The Fun of Meeting Jesus. You can get my books anywhere by ordering them, or on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And if you want to talk about anything at all, you can always contact me through the green contact block on robertagrimes.com. All of the more than 500 episodes of Seek Reality are available wherever audio podcasts can be found, and you can listen to all the new ones each week with the Seek Reality app that you can find for free wherever free apps are available. I try to make this as easy for you as I possibly can make it. And you can get now we're also, if I always used to say I have too good a face for radio ever to be a video presentation, but you can get us every week on video as well, by just getting us on Roku or Fire Stick, or I think we're also available just on YouTube. And meanwhile, this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy and please make the most of this coming week in our one reality, but never forget, always know that you are a powerful eternal being. And please never for a moment forget that you, most of all in this entire universe, you are infinitely, eternally, perfectly, and forever loved.